I stood at the back of the room as the guests slowly rose from their tables and pushed in their squeaking chairs. The high ceilings of the barn echoed with shuffling feet and the sounds of tapping high heels on the wooden floors. A luncheon show had just ended, and we were about to engage in a little activity we called a meet and greet. It was a tradition that obligated the actors to stand at the exit and bid the departing audience farewell. The seniors especially enjoyed it, and that was what the audience was that day, a bus group of elderly people with excess leisure time. Once they had collected their bags and used the bathroom, they at last made their way toward the impatient gang of actors, standing in Western costumes near the exit. We were doing a show called the Rootin' Tootin' Riverboat Review, and all of us were dressed as gunslingers, saloon girls, and Mexican banditos. With the house lights up, I could see them all in greater detail. Some carried walkers with tennis balls stuck to the aluminum feet. Others rolled oxygen tanks behind them, but the smiles on their faces described them best. They were cheerful, cavorting with each other and plainly enlivened by the performance. When they finally approached our line, they took turns shaking our hands with an old-fashioned appreciation.
Later, folks. Nice having you. Till next time. Get along, little doggy.
The minstrel hollered.
It was a lovely show. Thank you very much, young man.
An elderly lady said, her glossy eyes making contact with my own.
Oh, thank you. You folks laugh at everything. We love that.
She shuffled past me toward the two actresses on my right.
You're so beautiful. I just love your outfits,
she said. One young girl smiled shyly and reddened.
Thanks.
She returned in a hushed voice. The blonde next to her belted out,
You don't look too bad yourself, darling. Come back anytime.
The sound of their laughter and small talk floated around the spacious room, along with the minstrel's crooning, which drifted toward the owner of the place. The heavyset man bounced as he chuckled, enjoying the moment. He walked over to the double doors and opened them, stepping down on the brass doorstops to keep them open. As they lumbered by, their faces spoke of an earlier, more heroic time. A stout old gentleman proudly wearing a World War II battleship cap saluted as he walked by. When one particularly elderly lady glanced at me, I took her by the hand as she passed. Although her face was lined with age, her eyes shone and mouth smiled.
I thought you were a peach,
she said.
You folks ought to be on Broadway.
Of course, actors always hear that. The compliment was almost a cliché. But as I felt her fragile hand, so light and frail it might break with the slightest squeeze, she seemed to stare right into me, a stare that reinforced in me the truth of a soul that must lurk behind the face and never die.
Thanks, darling. It was my pleasure. Have a nice trip back to the ranch,
I said, hiding a bit behind my cowboy accent. She only broke eye contact with me at the sudden sound of air brakes, which came from the bus pulling up outside. You rarely get that from younger people, gratitude, that is. I could almost watch her memories as she looked at me, wondering what she might have done with all those years. As always, I could detect her well-practiced politeness, but also a subtle whiff of generational jealousy. I was still young, playing and in the game while she was old, playing her final hand. A subtle guilt crept over me. How long, I wondered, until I am like her? Some performers make fun of older audiences, call them blue hairs and the living dead. Not me, reader. I'm on the phone with them. These people see the top entertainment in the country. They travel to New York, Atlantic City, Branson, Missouri. They're taken to the best shows, and several times a year at that. They know it when you're not giving your all. She passed down to the next scene stealer, a wild-haired tattoo actor called Ozzy, who shook her hand a bit too hard. I looked down and noticed that he had forgotten to put his boots on before coming out to greet the guests. He was standing in his socks, causing me to shake my head in disbelief. Moving past Ozzy, she arrived at Craig, our resident balladeer, who with a strum of his ukulele sang a quick rendition of Camptown Races.
Come on, Belle. They make us sing for our supper here,
he said. The blonde actress smiled and sang with him. A taller gentleman, unusually fit for his age, marched up to me and shook my hand vigorously, trying to impress me with his grip.
Fantastic,
he said loudly.
just fantastic. I saw you in the show last year.
Oh, yeah? You recognize me?
I smiled, knowing that there had not been a show last year.
Oh, yes, sir,
he said as he leaned in towards me.
I thought you were the best.
He shook my hand, and I noticed there was $1 he had discreetly placed into my palm. He winked at me, then moved on down the line.
Hey, you got a business card?
Another aged man said.
Sure do, partner.
I replied as I handed him one from my vest pocket. As he walked off, I took a quick look around the room and laughed. Laughed at all the crazy action going on. It's a curious thing to be an actor, you know. An occupation of vast contrasts. Part meritocracy, part aristocracy. We're thought of as jokes by the gainfully employed, but when successful, we're labeled role models. Our parents generally consider us among the most idle, yet actors in movies are deemed idols. In general, we're paid the least, even though many celebrities are wealthy actors. We are a peculiar people because in this digital world, who reads? And what's more, who reads then recites? Sometimes I wonder why I chose this insane profession, reader. Then I remember that people don't dream of becoming great accountants, but fantasize about becoming stars. Does one find amateur secretaries? Plumber hobbyists? Dishwasher enthusiasts? Not that I've ever seen. Ha ha ha, yes. Such a strange profession this acting is. As the line of guests moved by, Craig shouldered his ukulele and leaned over to me.
Hey, boss, you think I could skip rehearsal tomorrow? I got a gig up in Long Island,
he whispered.
Sure, but I need you for the rest of them. We're only 4 weeks away from opening the Christmas show,
I said.
You know, it sure would be great if we only did one show all year. Just think, no more rehearsals,
he said before pointing to an old lady's large handbag.
Hey, sweetheart, you didn't put any silverware in that purse, did you?
She laughed, and her girlfriends next to her found it hilarious.
Oh, did you hear what he said? He said Amelia was stealing the silverware.
A woman said, her voice lowered from a lifetime of smoking. While watching them, I noticed that the majority of the audience had left the building, and the troopers had snuck off to the dressing room. One show all year. If only it were possible, I thought. All aboard! The bus driver yelled from outside. The last of the leisure seekers had vacated and the servers were clearing dirty parfait glasses off of the tables. In passing, about a month had passed since some Muslims crashed planes into the World Trade Center, plunging the country into a new recession. But we were fortunate, as only scant months had elapsed since that first snowy show I spoke of in the previous pages. After which, we'd attained the dignity of 50 new events to our name. In truth, during that propitious span, the company seemed to explode forward, as if its creation was unchained. Restaurants called and enthusiasts volunteered. If I needed something, a sudden yard sale would appear, brimming with exactly the right useful and needed items, and at fire sale prices. To demonstrate our luck, I'd received a call. One of those special calls that changes fates and alters futures. Miraculously, we had been offered a full-time permanent residency, contracted to gross a staggering 6 figures per year. This by the owner of a new cedar barn, erected in a small town that was not really a town. A concocted collection of small historical buildings that were moved, restored, and converted to create a tourist attraction. This new patron gave us quite the lineup of shows to produce after the Western. A Christmas Carol, Shiver Me Timbers, Medieval Mayhem, a whole year of entertainment scheduled to keep our players and playgoers busy. The actors soon settled in at that timbered hall theater, which suited me greatly. In fact, the smell of fresh cedar wood, of which it had been made, would ever after trigger in me the very idea of success. And so, there we were. The Riddlesbrood Touring Theatre Company was in glorious permanent residence. A reinvention from low state to high. A reshaping of my fate that seemed to me almost unnatural. Although I did not understand the mechanics of it, I was happy to enjoy its benefits. My creative spirit soared as all my ambitions were realized. We were running at full steam with actors on salary, all quartered together in a cast house tucked comfortably amid the pines. I walked over to the closet, my spurs ringing all the way. Once there, I shut off the dimmers, amplifiers, and killed the power to the tech booth. Amazingly, all of this had become rather routine, now that we had completed not just a show or two, but could boast of finishing our season. The kitchen staff had put away the chafing dishes from the buffet, and one of them was mopping up the wooden floor.
Only about 10 minutes left,
the waiter said, craning his neck out of the door. I smiled, imagining how my wicked stepmother would hate to see me now. Through all of her machinations and bitchcraft, she had tried to steal my happiness. She had failed. I thought to myself that within 18 months I had somehow been able to recreate all that I had lost at that infamous dinner theater by the sea. All with one notable exception. This time, it was mine. As the last of my sly humorists slinked out and I shut the windows, the faint smell of ash from a recent wildfire wafted into the room, followed by an eerie gray dust carried on an ill wind. The omen cast a shadow over the Cedar Hall, sending into my senses a forewarning.
All done. I'll see you tomorrow,
the waiter hollered. His overeager exit was such that as he skipped out, he never noticed the mop he had leaned against the wall was falling over. The wooden handle of the mop smacked the floor as the door swung closed behind him. And just like that, the room had died. Yes, even rooms can die. The once lively space was invaded by a wretched silence, a special kind of quiet possessing a creepy liberty, encroaching without any invitation. All the aliveness, once it's chased away, leaves a sad, hollow emptiness behind, an emptiness that, at the time, reminded me that earlier that day another portal had been born and had shortly thereafter perished. It started in the back of the room, where the audience fades into the seething black. A nauseous place where anything could be watching you. It was during the show that I had seen it again, the thing behind the faces. You see, as the first scene wore on and the audience yielded to captivation, that area-form distortion once again began to swoon reality. I had uttered my lines dutifully and doubted anyone had detected a misstep, yet whenever they laughed, I spotted from my oblique view threads shimmering about the crowd. Similar to dewy cobwebs, they seemed to entangle the guests, the gossamer obscuring their bodies and highlighting their heads. Motes in the atmosphere sparkled in front of the stage as if ghostly hands had tossed glitter from the ceiling. My depth perception, too, was bedeviled among their faces again. Background became four, sight's canvas unevenly stretched over our not-so-solid-seeming world. From the corner of my eye between my cues, I glimpsed the congealing portcullis and sensed that oft-remembered presence which lurked behind it. Stronger than before, its purple eyes glared from behind the slumbering crowdlings, whispering in their ears. Honestly, if you decide to come to one of our shows, reader, it's best that you don't look behind you. At last, the curtain call ended its visit in dissipation. More concerning than all of that was the entity's enhanced powers to manifest in other, newer ways. Touching on this, and to touch it gave me a shiver, I must return to the inscrutable old hat rack. It was a prop with a cold, bewildering nature that outsoared commonplace strangeness. that kind of creepy aura you feel when holding the shriveled paw of a dead rabbit. Employed to adorn the set, the metal stand furnished the stage with a stateliness that one might expect from a throne, a shrine, or a sacrificial altar. More fitting, I imagine, that it be used as a weapon by a giant stoking the blaze of a wizard's pyre. Its active yet more elusive power seemed to be that hats, coats, and apparently makeup kits would vanish, only to turn up resting quietly on the old brass lattice. A carelessly forgotten vest or pair of pants left backstage would disappear, and only after the unhappy actor missed their scene would it miraculously reappear, hanging from that old hook. The hat rack was a lost and found, if you will, and a thief combined. Moreover, once the missing garments were recovered, even if hours later, they retained a suspicious warmth, as if recently worn. Whether these occurrences were the work of a cast joker or something of a more preternatural origin was never really discerned. But whatever the truth of it was, there was no doubting its effect on gab and gossip. Any actor will tell you that life within the theater has a sort of innate magic to it. In retrospect, I believe the mysterious hat rack was merely an extension of that fact. Acting, after all, is an occupation that sits precariously on the border between reality and imagination. The younger charlatans among the troupe spied a sort of luck in that tarnished old stand, as I did. The feeling gave rise to a sort of taboo amongst us, a maxim that decreed one should not debunk it. Some remarked that on occasion, long after the spark of the stage lights had died away, the slight but unmistakable impression of laughter permeated the space behind the backdrop. Not, mind you, the sounds of laughter approaching one's ears in the normal sense, but rather the vague belief that something was laughing. An unbidden, heavy presence contriving behind the set, a living stage fright, warming the curtains with more than the 300-watt lamps. This might have been understandable, as the theater had been filled with such raucous noises but hours before. Surely the air itself must retain some hint of it. Yet as I looked at the stage, my mind would not be calmed by that assumption, it being outweighed by a grain of chance that a sentience, secretive in nature, dwelled there, a phantom perhaps not wise to overhear. Who was this imaginary friend, I thought. The harder I tried to brush off these thoughts, the stronger and more real they became. Once I remember being told a story by one of our troopers, I think it was Craig, that long after the audience departed one night, he noticed the weird coat rack would go missing, only to turn up in some other hidden corner of that auditorium. Somehow that covert clothes tree always seemed to be at the center of these accounts, and whatever this conjury was, it had goals of its own. The infant company had escaped my mother's attic, but perhaps something else had as well. But if these allegations of apparitions had any substance to them, there was never any hard proof. For weeks, the cast and even some waiters proudly claimed to have witnessed the mysterious entity, moving costumes to and fro about the stage. The owner of the building, a breezy, jolly sort of fellow, delighted in these tales and even went so far as to use them as a marketing ploy to help sell his establishment all the better. While these new, if less truthful, accounts of our residents' skullduggery made for interesting conversation, its real name was to remain a riddle. I walked out of the cedar barn and locked the doors tight. After one last look, I laughed to myself before looking over to my vandal and noticing a small puddle with a reflective sheen under the engine. My laughter stopped. The smell of fuel and asphalt entered my nose, an odor reminding me of another place. I opened the door, reached over and turned on the ignition. It started. My smile returned. Just a little leak, I thought. It was nothing to worry about. At least, not yet.